So I'm going to turn this over to Cathy and have her
All right.
tell us all about it.
So thank you guys for coming today, even if you had to come here because Diane forced you to. I appreciate that. Just a little bit about myself. I've been with the system for 12 years now down at NCC. Back in 2014, when the first adjunct collective bargaining agreement kind of came into play, it prompted us to get a little more formalized. We had been doing a lot of stuff on our campus, but that kind of made us say, you know what, we really want to put our processes down on paper and kind of go from there. So I'm going to go over some stuff that we do on our campus. By no means is it the best way to do everything. It just works for us. You know, in HR, we like to share ideas and not reinvent the wheel if we don't have to. So not to say any one process is better than the other. Obviously, I don't know the culture of your campus. You know, we know it works with the culture of our campus. I will say you guys are very lucky to have my friend Diane because she's awesome, so I'll plug her for a minute. But you know, every campus has, you know, you have your own kind of living, breathing culture, and you know who, you know, the players are on your campus, so keep that in mind when we're going through. If you have any questions at all, I'm pretty informal, so just shout at me, yell at me, put your hand up, whatever you're good. You can throw stuff at me if you want, go with that. So again, this kind of having the adjunct CBA really prompted us to do a lot of this stuff. Obviously, as you guys probably know, you know, just a little bit about it. It really just formalized all of the negotiated policies, encourages better relationships with our adjuncts, and you know, obviously we have probably about 65–68% of our classes right now at our campus being taught by adjuncts. So they are a huge part of our campus, and we want to make sure that we acknowledge that, realize that, and you know, move forward with that. We would be nowhere without our adjuncts that we have. We currently have like 32 full-time faculty members on our campus, so they're spread pretty thin. So you know, basically just a couple of things real quick about the CBA. You know, the formal grievance procedure is always a big thing, right? In every CBA, I always kind of crack up. The first beginning of it is about grievance, and I always feel like, why do we put that first? Like, that's the part we don't want to do. That should be at the end, but it's always in the first. Union representation, obviously, to make sure that we're all being compliant on our campuses. And again, this really outlined hiring and dismissal guidelines for covered adjunct faculty. So who's covered, right? That's always the first question. How do we know who's covered? Whoops, sorry about that. Let's go back. Look at that, I figured the arrows out. So any adjunct faculty who taught 5 semesters in the last 5 years, I always tell my folks 5 and 5, just keep that in your brain. If they're teaching in their 5th semester, they've taught already 4 and they're teaching in their 5th, then they're also considered to be covered. Anybody that's a full-time faculty member, when they retire and they become adjunct, a lot of our full-time faculty members, once they hit retirement, they come back and adjunct for us right away. Now there's a little waiting period, but they're also considered to be covered adjuncts pretty quickly within the first year. Semester, when you're counting up semesters of 5 semesters in 5 years, we're counting spring and fall. We don't count summer. So that could change, obviously, as you guys probably know. They're in negotiations right now for their new contract. So, you know, we always have to make sure when the new one comes out, we check to make sure these things are still valid. 4 consecutive semesters. So anyone, I know on our campus, our banner coordinator is very, very good about making sure that she clears folks out of banner if they haven't taught for, you know, haven't been available and they haven't taught for a certain amount of time. So her and I, yeah.
Can I ask you a question
Sure.
about that? What if there isn't something for them in a term?
If there isn't, so what we do on our campus is we make a notation of that. So we run reports on myself and academic affairs to try and make sure we're kind of figuring out at the end of every semester, our HR folks, we have to put who's suspended, who's terminated. So we send lists each semester to our department chairs and our program coordinators, and we say, okay, I have these people teaching, these people, are they suspended or are they termed? And so what we do is on those spreadsheets, we make a note of that. In other words, like it's not their fault, they haven't taught, we kind of just make a note, we highlight that just so that we know not to term them out. We can keep them suspended a little bit longer. I'm not sure if that's the best way, but that works for us, so that's kind of how we do it. And that does happen sometimes. We have some classes that just don't run a lot, and so they're kind of on call for a long time. So at NCC, our new adjuncts, we always feel like you got to get people when they're new, right? You want to get them involved as soon as you can. Or adjunct orientation is our big ticket. You know, that's really one thing that we kind of drill into everyone's head. You know, that as you're a new adjunct, come to that because you'll learn a ton of stuff that you need to know. Department goals, department initiatives, those are all rolled out to our adjuncts when they're hired. The other thing we do at our campus is what we call All College Forum. Once a month, the entire campus gets together. We meet between 12 and 1, so hopefully we don't interrupt anyone's class time. Usually that's our common hour block. And we invite our adjuncts to attend that as well. Obviously, our day adjuncts can, but a lot of times our night adjuncts can't, but we get that. One big thing that we did and we rolled out in 2014, all of our new adjuncts are evaluated in writing their first semester. So we start right off the block, we want to get a baseline for performance. Probably similar on your campus as ours. A lot of folks who teach adjunct don't always have teaching experience, right? So sometimes they could be expert at their area of expertise, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but that's okay. You know what I'm saying, right? Content expert, that's what I was going for. But they don't always know how to share that knowledge with people and you know, present that in a classroom format. So we want to make sure that we can get to those people that are struggling and help them when they're first here. The other thing, we have a weekly newsletter. We have a 505 that we basically do every week. Our campus communications specialist does that. We make sure that all our adjuncts get that as well, because it pretty much just says everything that's going on campus. Keeps everybody up to date, new hires, initiatives, political people. We've had everybody coming through our doors the last couple of weeks. So we just want to make sure that they're engaged and kind of locked in and they know what's going on campus. It makes them feel a little bit more part of things. And I think that's the biggest thing we try and do on our campus is make our adjuncts feel a part of everything. If I'm talking too fast, just raise your hand. I'm a native New Yorker, so it just happens. So if I start rattling on too fast, just wave at me and I'll stop, I promise. So adjunct onboarding. Every campus has a process to get a new adjunct. What do you do with them? First thing we do is our VP of AA. Once we hire someone, you know, we go through the interview process, all that. We hire them, our VP AA sends a letter to them, welcome them then to campus, lets them know when adjunct orientation is. That is highly recommended. We provide them with campus resource materials right off the bat. So we let them know we have an adjunct faculty handbook that we put out on our website. We let them know how to get out there to see that. On the HR website, I have my own page, there's an adjunct section there that we put pertinent things for them to know about. We do forms, things like that. So we just want to make sure we let them know, hey, this is out there. You might not be aware, but check it out, and everybody's all their free time they have, right? The other thing we crack up all the time, but campus maps. That's like the biggest thing, right? When a new adjunct comes, they walk around and they're like, I have no idea what building I'm in or where my class is, right? So they're the biggest hit. They love that. It seems like such a silly thing, but we try and do it, you know, as they get here so they feel prepared for their first night showing up at the campus. One of the things that we found, we had a little space in our library over the summer. We expanded it much bigger, so now we're really psyched about it. But we have an adjunct faculty lounge. So we have a dedicated space. It's part of our CTLE, which is our Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence, where we run different types of trainings and things for adjuncts and for full-time faculty, just to enhance their teaching in the classroom. So we have a big room, and it's awesome, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We have a FIT program that's run by Sally Bashalini, who is our director of CTLE. She's also a department chair, full-time faculty member for us. And then the other thing, you know, it seems, again, so simple, but academic affairs in my office, we stay open late during the week. And this is a lot of times, a lot of our evening adjuncts are running after their job, right? And they're getting to campus, and it's 5:30, and if all the offices are shut down, they're kind of like, where do I go? I can talk to campus safety, and that's about it. That's the only people that are here. So especially in the beginning of the semesters, we make sure the first couple weeks that we're here so they can come in and ask all those logistical questions. And again, it seems like a simple thing, but they love it. I had a gentleman who came in last night at 6 o'clock, and he was like breathing hard, and he was sweating, and he was running down, and he had a question. He's like, your door's open. And I'm like, it is. It like made his whole day, you know. So sometimes it's the little things, you know, we get so worked up in the details, but sometimes it's just those little things that make a difference for folks when they come on your campus. Having a dedicated space, we love this. This again, we had a small little pilot program. Now we opened up big rooms, probably about the size of this room in there. We have computers that are available. They can come in, they can go on Canvas, they can check their email, they can print stuff in there. We have a little meeting space designed in there, so if they need to meet with a student before class, they can do so. Because obviously, you know, nobody has enough offices to have every adjunct have their own space, so we tried to build space for them all to use. We have instructional library materials for loan and review, different types of training materials for them they can take out, learn classroom management techniques, things like that. All of our mailboxes, their mailboxes are in there, employee bulletin boards. We put a fridge in there. We have a space for them to eat. And we have free coffee, which is like fantastic. So, you know, that's a little investment that we made that goes a long way. So the kind of thing we look at it is adjuncts can kind of come in, they can throw their coat down, they can jump on the computer, take 5 minutes, grab a cup of coffee, head up to class. And we keep our cafeteria open till 6 too, to try and get those transfer people if they need to grab a bite to eat, as they're here too. So orientation is our, like I said, our big ticket item. We tell people 1,000 times, please come to orientation, we beg you. Every fall we offer it for new and returning adjuncts at the beginning of the academic year. And then in the spring, generally, we just invite the new adjuncts. Anyone else can come, but you know, usually the fall is the big kickoff to say, here's all the initiatives we're working on this year, all the things that are happening on campus. And in the spring, we just get a little less new hires normally, so we have a smaller, more intimate one. And again, it's pretty simple. It's a meet and greet. They can meet other new adjuncts, right? It's always better to go through something with someone else who's clueless like you are when you first get on the job. So, you know, that works out really well. We also have our faculty mentors usually come to adjunct orientation. So different departments will send, it could be their program coordinators. Sometimes it's the department chairs. Sometimes it's just a full-time faculty member, or even we have other adjuncts. You know, we're lucky on our campus. We have quite a number of adjuncts who have been with us for 10, 12, 15 years. So they're kind of pillars of our community. So they'll come in and help out. We feed them dinner, big ticket item. Feed them, they will come, right? So it really makes a difference. And we schedule our sessions for 2 hours initially again. So what happens in the first hour? First they come in, they have a check-in, they get usually a packet of materials, normally whatever the presentations are or things that we want them to know. Grab their food, grab some coffee, have a seat, get settled in. Sally Basciolini, who's our director for CTLE, she does the welcome remarks. She's pivotal on our campus because she is like the adjunct guru. I mean, she does so much for our adjuncts, and we're really lucky to have that. So it's good to have a point person, if you guys could set that up in some way. We also always give out our Adjunct of the Year award. So each year we have an adjunct team, and we spend a week, it's usually in April, and it's Adjunct Appreciation Week. So we do little things, we put stuff in their mailboxes. When financial times are good, we buy them cool stuff, you know, that we can't. But we set up, sometimes we set up a luncheon, sometimes we'll set up a potluck and just let them know that we appreciate them, and the whole campus kind of gets involved to say, you know what the work you guys do is really important for us. So one of the things of that is also we send out surveys, and different departments can nominate any adjuncts that they have, and we have an Adjunct of the Year award. They get a nice plaque, certificate, they get, have some stand-up time here. We also invite them to a college forum so the president can shake their hand and thank them for their service too. Goes a long way. Seems like, again, something little. Sometimes it's the little stuff that really makes a difference. And then we do a campus update time. Our Vice President of Academic Affairs is there. Our Vice President Student and Community Affairs is there. Our Career and Technical Education Coordinator comes. Our Computer Training Coordinator comes. So we make sure we get the key people in each area and the head people, right? So we make them stay late. Our VPs stay till 8 o'clock that night, and everyone loves that because they're like, haha, they have to work a long day too. But it's really important to show the value that it's, you know, you're spending the time and using that kind of capital, and you're hearing it right from the top of, you know, here's what we're working on this year. So in the second hour, so that kind of is for everybody. The first hour we do campus, mostly we just roll out all the different initiatives. Like you guys, I'm sure, have 42,000 initiatives each year that you work out on. We want to make sure we let them know that. So then in the second hour, we kind of split the groups up. Our new adjuncts, they get to meet with our Director of Academic Success Center, Disability. They talk about RAP plans, tutoring procedures. They meet with the assistant registrar. They go over grading policies, no-show rosters, all that kind of logistical stuff. Our IT director gets to talk to them about our lovely printing process. I don't know if you guys use paper cut down here too. That's always a fan favorite. Everyone loves it. You have to go like 40 feet down the hallway to print something. It's great. Talk about where they can make their copies. You know, some of those logistical things that you don't always think of telling people. We also have them sign up for RAVE, make sure they know that our emergency notification process is in place. Our Director of Security comes in, goes through safety procedures, lets them know if you're having issues with someone in a class, you're here at night, you need to be walked to your car, whatever it is, they know where the campus safety is located, they get to meet the person face to face, gives them that connection. Really, we're always trying to just establish connections and make them feel like they know who we are on campus, because that's really the hardest thing. It can be very lonely as an adjunct. You know, you kind of show up, you teach your class, and you go home, and you don't always get to meet people. So we kind of bombard them up front and say, here's everyone you need to know. And then our CTLE coordinator, again, she goes over professional development opportunities. Her office, they work on things like classroom management, training, dealing with difficult students. You know, they do all kinds of workshops, seminars, and so they like to just let the adjuncts know what's available for them. The returning adjuncts in the second hour, you know, they can stay for an information session, kind of refresher. They can go if they want to. We don't force them to stay for the second. A lot of them use it as meeting times. They're department chairs, they're program coordinators. They figure we got you here, let's have a meeting and we'll talk about stuff. Sometimes we do training sessions. Sometimes they go down to the Adjunct Center and they just use it for prep time, getting ready for their classes. They're here on campus. They get all that stuff done before the first night of class. So that's kind of, a lot of them do that. They try and get all that, get their contracts in, get all the, you know, T's crossed and I's dotted. So, you know, again, orientation is key. That's like the first kind of big ticket hit we get for them. We also have a mentoring process on campus. And this has really been, every year it gets better. You know, the first year it was, we were trying it out and it was a little bit lame, you know, but then it's gotten a lot better. So it's like the more people get involved, we're realizing how it really matters. Again, most of our new adjuncts, a lot of them haven't taught before. So that's always something you gotta keep in your mind, that you guys have lived and breathed in this and you do it every day and it comes natural to you. It doesn't always come natural to someone else who's coming from industry. The other thing is, you know, time demands, right? I mean, time demands on all of us are crazy, but some of our adjuncts are working full time. They're screeching in the parking lot at 5:30, 5:45 for a 6 o'clock class, you know, so we just want to make sure that they have someone on campus that they can contact. And sometimes we leave mentoring, we don't really have a formalized mentoring process. We kind of leave it up to each department. Each department has their own little community and their own little way they do stuff. And I always say it's like your own little country, right? So I don't want to tell you how to run your country. But the fact that having someone, a go-to person, and not always the department chair or the program coordinator, because sometimes people feel like, well, that's my new boss. I don't want to harass them and ask them 40 questions. They're going to think I don't know what I'm doing, right? So having someone who's a colleague, whether it's a full-time faculty member, whether it's a seasoned adjunct, just to have that go-to person. You can ask them a million questions and not feel like you're bothering them, because that's what they're there for. Again, they share ideas, best practices, student experiences, things that they can talk with them about. We make sure that we offer as many trainings as we can, especially with Canvas. A lot of folks haven't used that, so we make sure we have a Canvas training program they can get involved in. Again, our biggest thing we always say is that faculty is faculty. Whether you're full-time, whether you're adjunct, a student in your classroom, they don't care. They don't know what your part-time or full-time status is, right? You're their professor. Whether you're there for 1 night a week or 80 hours a week, it doesn't really matter to them. You're the face of our college. So you try and always keep that in mind. We want to make sure everyone's prepared and they feel comfortable so that they can roll out their courses in the best way for our students. That's what we're all here for, right? Again, dedicated space is the best thing ever. We do a lot of mentoring sessions in that space. A lot of times they'll meet with their folks before or after class, and they can check in with them and say, you know, I'm trying to do this gradebook thing online and I'm not sure what's happening, and they'll sit down at a computer and help them and show them so they can get it done right. Sometimes it's just as simple as that kind of stuff. Again, refrigerator, eating, coffee, key, big ticket item. And after they go through, you know, most adjuncts kind of get mentored that first year. You really have that, you know, lack of better, formalized but not so formalized. But you know, you see people that you know 4 years ago were a new adjunct and a mentor, and they're still having lunch in the cafeteria, and that's just really makes them feel comfortable, and it's kind of cool. They stay friends a lot of times. And that helps, right? It helps to be part of that community. You have those connections. Connections for adjuncts are key. If they feel connected, they feel part of what you're doing, and it makes all the difference in the world. Here's just one example. This is actually Sally's area. So Sally, like I said, she's the adjunct guru, so she has everything down to a science. In her department, she assigns a full-time mentor to each person, acclimates them to the department, college culture, make sure they know what's happening, helps them out setting up their syllabi, class assignments, all that kind of stuff, syllabus. A lot of times they're a sounding board for concerns and questions. You know, adjuncts get frustrated just like we do that are here all week, right? So sometimes they need that person to bounce things off of. And what they do in their department is she does informal classroom observations. So again, we let each department figure out what works. You guys know what works better for your own department. She likes to go that route because she feels like you get a better feel for how an adjunct's handling their classroom space, right? How are they interacting with the students? Are they standing in one spot at a podium talking like this? Are they walking around? You know, how comfortable are they in the classroom? So she really likes that part. Again, it might not work for every department, so that's something that, you know, again, we've decided on our campus, our department chairs and our program coordinators know their departments better than anyone. So we just allow them to determine what works for their areas. We don't want to say everybody has to do this and follow this mold. We understand there's differences. So another part of mentoring, we do the FIT program, which used to be called something else. We all love acronyms in higher ed, right? So now it's called the FIT program. Most people think they're going to work out. That's not really what they're doing. So we kind of, you know, obviously we have to tweak that a little bit. But basically what we do is through our CTLE center, you know, again, we offer a lot of professional development opportunities. And we want to get our adjuncts involved in those. So we make everything voluntary. We don't make them come. You know, but we offer it. We want them to know what's out there. We want them to know what we have available. So the FIT program is great because it's an online course. They can take it on their own time. They don't have to be in the building if they don't want to be. They can work through it and take it at their own pace. And each module, you know, works as a prerequisite. So you start off and you kind of move through it till the end. And we like to have our folks complete their modules in one semester. So we just say you have a whole semester to walk through this.
Is that a Nashua product? Or did you get it from?
We got it from somewhere, and I can find out where. I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get you that information. So there's 5 modules in it. Understanding by design, instructional strategies for diverse learners, assessment of student learning and rubrics, cooperative learning, And then how you can turn conflicts into opportunities for learning. Yay, conflict's always fun, right? So you try and get, a little bit of everything. But like I said, the best thing about them is they're flexible. So some of our adjuncts will bust through them all in the first week. Other ones will, they can do it at their own pace. They have a lot of things going on in their life. We try not to put more pressure on them. We just try and say, hey, we have this great program, but we understand that you have time constraints. But I can get you the information on that.
Please.
Yeah.
Hi. So is it required for all adjuncts to complete these modules?
We don't require it.
Okay.
We highly recommend it.
Highly recommend.
Yes.
And so there's
And we like to have
no-
speakers who've done it, and we're like, tell them how great it was. So at orientation, we might have someone come up and be like, I didn't think this program was going to work for me, but I took it, and it was great because I felt so much more confident. And so we type it up.
So there's no salary that's attached to it because
There's
it's not
no,
required.
It's not required.
Based on
Yeah.
CPA.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So the other big thing we did, so that's kind of what we do in onboarding, how we get people in there, how we mentor them while they're here. We spend a lot of time with new adjuncts in the beginning because that really sets the tone, right, for the rest of their time with us. Adjunct Evaluations was a big thing on our campus. We met for many, many months trying to figure this one out. Back in 2014, I think we finally got our model under control. We did the start from a blank paper, which I don't really recommend. Start from somewhere else and rip it apart. But the blank paper was a little stressful, but we ended up getting there. It just took us a while. In the CBA gives department chairs and program coordinators their discretion that they can observe classes, so they're allowed to go in. Observations should be documented, reviewed with the adjunct, so it's not some big secret black ops or anything like that. Everybody knows what's happening. So we had to talk a lot about how are we going to measure performance. There's no community college system form. We have system forms for staff and system forms that you guys get as faculty members. But for adjuncts, we went off the rails and we made our own. So maybe someday there'll be, a system-wide one, but this is just the one that we've built for us, and we've used it now. We're going on our 6th year, so we're pretty happy with it. So we measure performance for adjuncts. Obviously, student evaluations are a big part of what they do, right? Every class gets observations. We do those classroom observations in their first semester. Department chairs, program coordinators look at their syllabi, teaching materials that they're using to make sure that they're kind of really getting how we want things to be done and they're getting what the students need. Student commentaries, right? Students will tell you a lot of stuff, right? Good and bad and ugly sometimes, but so sometimes that, if you have a student that comes down, we had one a couple weeks ago, came down, met with the VPAA just to say how awesome their class was. Like, who does that? And it's great. Like, if a student's going to take the time to do that, that says a lot about that teacher. And then obviously evidence of student learning, right? If you have a class where every student's failing, red flag, right? That could be a problem somewhere. So, the department chairs and program coordinators look at how those students are working through things. So our form, again, this is not saying this is the best way to do it. There's plenty of ways to do it. This is just how we molded into doing it. We combine the student evaluation data and the classroom observation. We feel really strongly that the classroom observation is a big piece of it. We had to make sure it met with the CBA, right? We don't want to violate our own contract. That's not fun for us in HR when that happens, right? It gives us a useful tool. It gives us a standardized format. Many of our departments were doing kind of pieces of it, and they all said it would be great if we just had one form that we all used. And we also have adjuncts that teach in more than one department, right? So they get like this super huge form in one department and like a 2-sentence one in another, so it kind of looks weird, So we kind of standardized it. And also, people, it's always, I don't know, we crack up about this all the time, but people really want feedback. They act like they don't, but they really do, right? And especially when it's good, that's even way more fun than when it's not good. But everybody wants to do their best job. No one wants to get up in front of a classroom and be awful, right? While their students fail. Everybody's doing the best they can. So it's really important to give them that feedback, areas that they can improve. It might help us to say, okay, we need a training on this because this is a common theme that our folks can't do. So it helps us to know what trainings we should put together. And it really brings people closer to their department and their institutional goals. And again, goes back to that connectivity. When you feel attached to something and you know what's going on and you know where you want to get, it's much easier to feel like you're a part of the team instead of just someone coming in and out at night and, you know, being in the shadows and you know, not really knowing anything that's happening. It's much easier to connect with your students when you feel that you can represent the school in a good way. So this is just our form. This is the header. Again, by no means is it the best way, but I will certainly share it with Diane. If you guys want to take a look at it, you can chop it up, you can disregard it, you can use it. We don't care. It's fine. We'll share it. Just at the top, obviously some of the basic stuff you put in there. And then we really broke it down into 4 parts. And so one of the things that when we first started meeting way back when is our department chairs and program coordinators said, we need this form to be easy. It can't be complicated. You know, some departments have 40 adjuncts, some departments maybe have 2. So with those ones with 40, you know, if they have 10 new ones in a semester, that can be a lot of work. So we really wanted to make sure that we hit a lot of the areas that we felt were important, but that we also made the form easy for people to use. So this is really just free form writing for department chairs and program coordinators. We didn't want to make it a complicated scoring system. You know, we just wanted to be able to give feedback and provide that information. So the first part we talk about is the classroom evaluation, just a description, of what they observed when they were in the classroom, what the lesson was. Did the instructor seem to have a lot of knowledge for the topic, right? The students in this class might not know, but you guys certainly know if they know what they're talking about or not, right? What different methods of instruction did they use? And also, obviously, their classroom management, which is a key piece, too. So that kind of gives them a little area to write a little bit about each of those things. And then they just answer a couple questions. Did the adjunct communicate the material? Did they encourage student participation? Use different learning materials? Have an organized learning environment? And that should be show respect for students at all. I don't know what respect is. Apparently.
Yeah, I don't think we want to reset.
I'm not really sure about that one, so that should be respect. And I should have sang the song in my head whenever I spell that word. I usually sing Aretha, right? But I don't know what was happening. But we felt like these were kind of the 5 key things we wanted adjuncts to do in a classroom, and that debate went on for months, I gotta tell you. That was like very interesting to see what was really the top 5 important things you want an adjunct to do while they're in the classroom. That was an awesome conversation, and it went on for a long time, and this is what we kind of boiled it down to. And again, it may be different on your campus, it may be different in your department. Then at the end, we want to show the strengths, and we want to show the areas for development. We don't want to call them weaknesses because you know, sometimes that can be derogatory. So there's always areas for improvement. Nobody's perfect. Everyone can always improve. We want to make it a positive thing. We don't want this to feel like it's negative, detrimental. We want to make sure it's like, we want to help you guys be the best teacher you can be. And this is the way that we're doing it. So we were very careful with how we worded stuff to make it feel like it wasn't, you know, you're going to sit down and we're going to evaluate you and tell you all the things you do wrong. We want to make sure we tell them what they do right? Because everybody does some stuff right. The second section of it is the department and institution participation. You know, are they connected with the campus? What are they involved in the department? Do they pay attention to deadlines? A lot of our department chairs and program coordinators said, we never get our rosters on time. We never get this. We never get the syllabi. So some of those deadlines are really important. We try and let our adjuncts know that even though it seems like a silly thing, it is really important. And then are they being compliant with policies and procedures, right? That's always important. It's not always the fun stuff, but it's important that they do that. The third part is about professional development. If they have any previous goals, so if they've already been evaluated, they might have goals that came from that first evaluation that they bring over, so they'll look at those. If they don't have that, then they'll just look at what are some professional development goals for next time. So here's what we observed, here's what your students said, here's what we want you to work on for your next semester or your next academic year. So we just want to make sure, and we want to make sure that we have some adjuncts who will come down to our center and take a ton of stuff, and so we can write that here and show, look at all this person's doing. You know, they took the Canvas one, they took the dealing with difficult students one, they came in and they made the effort. We want to show that they did that because that's really important. And then the last part, just the overall review. Obviously, that's kind of the only grading we have on the whole thing. And then we do a recommended action plan. We have a space for that. Okay, here's what I'd like you to do next time. We also have a place for employee comments. We always want to get employee feedback. Everybody's got to sign it. We have a part on the bottom of the form when their next review is. So again, that's only thing we've mandated on our campus is that every new adjunct has to get an evaluation in their first semester. Beyond that, we leave it up to the department. And every department kind of does their own thing, and we're okay with that. But we at least want to have one on the books. Now, if the one we have on the books is a needs improvement, then we want to make sure we have another one the following semester, right? So that's kind of just a unwritten rule that, you know, if someone's kind of on the edge, but you want to give them another shot, we need to evaluate them again next semester to make sure that we want them to keep continuing or not. The other thing you want to keep in mind is if you do have an adjunct that's really not working out, after 5 semesters, they're covered under the CBA. So you really want to make sure that before you get to that point, you make sure that you're evaluating this adjunct and trying to give them the tools that they need to be successful, and if they're going to work out, if they're a good fit for your campus, right? So, you know, that's one of the reasons why we try to front load a lot of this stuff too, so we can really see what we're working with.
Kathy, generally speaking, does the next review usually happen annually? Usually, or?
It depends on the department. Normally what I tell folks is if you have someone that their first semester needs improvement, I want to see one for the next semester. I want to keep them close and see, like, did the person take all the stuff you talked about and
Right.
put it in there? We didn't really want to get into the, you know, counting out the months and all this other crazy stuff. So we kind of leave it up to the department and what their expectations are and the department chair. And we make sure that the department chair lets adjuncts know that prior, right? Because we don't want to feel like it's a process we just make up as we go along, right? So when they're first hired, we say, here's what our process is, just so that they know. Hi.
I kind of a plug, so I stole this form when I came over here, we adapted it for the social science.
Okay, see?
And it's
We share, we're good sharers.
It's worked out nicely because the other thing is I can post it for my instructors to see on my department site, so that way they actually know.
They know exactly what,
Right.
and
so-
we've done that on the HR site. We have the observation forms out there, we have the evaluation forms, we have their form that they can put when they're available. So we have all that out there so they can see what we're doing, because we want it to be transparent. We don't want it to be some mysterious, you know, like I said, black ops project.
Well, and it helps them see that the goal is to really work with them as an instructor from the beginning, and as you mentioned, from the outset of the conversation.
Yeah, and it's that connection with the department, and they feel like, hey, someone's noticing what I'm doing, like someone actually cares what I'm doing in the classroom. Everybody wants to do their best work, and they want to know that that's being recognized. And if they want, maybe if they're not doing their best work, they want to improve because they want their students to get a good experience. So it's very few times you get someone that comes in and says, I really want to screw this class up. You know? Really doesn't happen very often. So everybody really wants to do the best they can do. So a lot of this stuff we kind of developed in that mindset. So again, what's our process? New hires, first one's mandatory. That's pretty much our process, you know. So sometimes you want to look at some of our department chairs that, oh, I've had an adjunct for 10 years, they've never been observed. Great, so use the form for them, get them started, and see where they're at, check in with them. Student evaluations, a lot of times will show those performance concerns, right? If you get a lot of student feedback that's kind of making you a little bit nervous, then we would put them in there regardless of if they're a new adjunct or returning. And some of our returning adjuncts, if maybe they haven't had an observation in a long, long time, sit in with their class. It's not a bad thing, right? We just want to make sure, again, bottom line is you want to make sure those students are getting the best experience. They're our clients. They're paying to be there, right? They want to learn the material. We want to make sure we can give them good experience. So for the observation, again, we leave it up to the department. Do you want to do announced visits? Do you want to do unannounced visits? Maybe you do announced for new hires, you do unannounced for returning faculty. Whatever works in your department. These are just ways you can do it. We don't really like to mandate anything as far as that because, again, each department, its own little community and its own little island, so we don't want to pretend that we know how to run your stuff. You know, that's what you guys do. So you live and breathe it every day. The biggest thing that I've always told my folks is to make sure you let everybody know what the process is, right? Because nobody ever wants to feel like it's on the fly and we're just making this stuff up because we don't like you, or someone said something bad, so now we're going to torture you for a couple of classes. We just want to make sure that it's transparent. It's up there, it's out there. This is what's going to happen in our department. This is how we do it. So we encourage all of our departments to roll that out at the beginning of the semester, or usually at the academic year. If someone's new in the spring, obviously we make sure they get that too. If you do an announced visit, when we were putting our stuff together, they said, well, how would I go about that? So some of this is, again, obvious, but it's just, things that we do. Let them know when you're coming. Let them know why you're there, right? And also, sometimes they'll request a lesson plan ahead of time so they can follow along, and then they can see if the person's following that lesson plan. A student wouldn't always know, right, if they're following the lesson plan, but a program coordinator or a department chair would. Some departments like unannounced visits. It's kind of a spot check. They feel it's a more realistic snapshot, right? If you know someone's coming in your classroom, you're kind of going to be on your best behavior, and all your students are going to be happy and smiling. But sometimes if you just show up and you see a department chair in the back of the room, you're like, okay, I didn't have time to prepare for that. So they're going to get a different viewpoint. So some of our department chairs, like that a little bit better. Sometimes unannounced visits can be tough because what if you show up on a day there's a test, right? What if you show up when they're having student presentations? That's cool because you learn a lot of good stuff, but it doesn't really help you to know if the teacher's doing a good job if they're just sitting there grading presentations. So, sometimes it's scheduling. Unannounced can be a little bit of a scheduling issue. This was really, Sally, if the stars align, your schedules and the adjuncts will sync, right? She's got like 43 adjuncts in her department, so scheduling for her is key. But if not, what she's done sometimes is she's a department chair and she has program coordinators and some of her programs underneath her. Sometimes she'll ask them to do the classroom visit for her if she isn't able to schedule it to get there. Sometimes we'll say, all right, well, this semester's a nightmare scheduling. There's a ton going on. We'll do it next semester. And again, it's not an option for a new hire, but if you were just doing some of your returning adjuncts, we understand everybody's schedule is not open and free and people are just sitting around eating bonbons. We get that. So we want to try and make it as flexible as we can. So what do you do when you have the observation? One of the things that, a lot of our first timers said, sit in the back. You got to get a better view of the classroom. You can, just sitting behind students kind of lets you see what's going on in the classroom a little better than if you're sitting in the front and you're staring at everybody. Everyone's going to be on pretty good behavior. But if a student's not engaged, if you're sitting behind, they're not going to remember you back there, and that gives you an idea of the classroom management experience. Take notes for the form. We don't tell people to bring the evaluation form to class and fill it out while you're doing your observation, but take some notes that you can go back to your desk and fill it in. One of the big things they said, if you're going to leave before class ends, please don't make a big deal about it. Please do not make a ruckus, because sometimes that really does disrupt the flow of class. And then obviously, if you're exiting at the end of class, thank the instructor, let them know what's going to happen, what are the next steps going to be. So writing up the evaluation, again, we always suggest you do that after the fact. You're not going to do it while you're sitting in there because it doesn't really let you pay attention as much as we want. So we always say take notes. I'm an old school notebook taker. I walk in with a notebook and I just start writing stuff down, and then I can formulate it into the evaluation form later to make a little more sense. Plus I don't write that good, so I get to write it over so it's neater. Complete the form. Obviously, you always want to focus on the positives first. Again, we don't want this to be a detrimental process. We want this to be like, here's all the things you do great, but here's a couple things we want you to work on, right? So you always want to start off with the positive. Obviously, you want to request a meeting with your adjunct to go over the report with them face-to-face. Again, that connectedness, that's really important. When you have the meeting, a lot of our department chairs said, what do I do in the meeting? How do I run it? So we said, okay, here's what you do. Deliver, that adjunct is going to get a copy of their evaluation, review the strengths, discuss those weaknesses, ask for their perceptions of their performance. How do you think you're doing? Do you think you're doing a good job? What do you think you need to work on? That can be a very enlightening question to ask, and sometimes people don't think to do it because someone could be like, I am just drilling it here. These guys are getting an awesome thing. And you could be like, well, I was in there and, we had 4 kids sleeping in the back and, maybe there's a little something in the middle we need to talk about there. So to get their own perception really kind of helps you have that conversation. Goals and timelines, those are important to a lot of our, department chairs and program coordinators. You're trying to wrestle, you're herding cats all the time, right, between your students and your adjuncts. So, trying to keep things on track is important. If you have any follow-ups, talk about that. Say, hey, we're going to come back in a year and review you again, or hey, we're going to review you next semester. Just let them know what they're up for. And then obviously everybody signs the report. Where does that information live? What happens with that? Originals go to the VPAA office. They put a copy in their adjunct personnel file. Copy goes in the instructor's file so that they have it, so they know what those goals are or the areas that they're working on. And we always give a copy to the adjunct faculty member, right? That's important too. They should get a copy of anything that we're putting anywhere. They should have their own copy of it. Couple last thoughts. I know I'm throwing a lot of information, and I'm a fast talker, so I apologize. We say on our campus that the department chairs or the program coordinators must do the observations. And again, that's depending on the construct of your department. So we're not going to say only the department chairs, only the program coordinators. You could mix it up, but we don't really feel that anybody else in the department should just be doing an evaluation, right? It's personal, it's confidential information, so we want to keep it that way. Mentoring goes a long way. That's the biggest thing our adjuncts tell us, like, it was so nice to have a buddy. And it can be a formal mentoring system, it could be very informal. It could just be, hey, here's my phone number, text me, call me, whatever you need. However you guys want to set it up, but it's huge because it gives the adjuncts someone other than their boss, right, the person that hired them, to run stuff by and ask questions of, and they feel a little more comfortable doing it with a colleague than maybe with your boss or your new boss especially, right? You first get hired, you don't want to be running in their office every 5 minutes. So we really think that's great. Creative with your department, every department's different. There's really no wrong way to do it. It's kind of the way my philosophy is. There's no wrong way to include an adjunct in your community. The key is really just to do it and to make sure, because again, the biggest thing is our students don't know who's full-time, they don't know who's part-time, they don't know who's teaching 1 class, who's teaching 5, they don't care. It's their professor, it's their college experience. We want to make sure they don't have to worry about that. Any professor should be giving them a great classroom experience, whether they're part-time, full-time, it's their 30-year job or they're just starting out. We want to make sure those students get that great experience. Because at the end of the day, that's our college. So we try and invest a lot of stuff up front so that we're putting our college in a better light for our students. Questions, you guys can barrage me. That's my personal line. So don't sell that to anybody. Don't let my campus know. If you want to shoot me an email, if you have questions, I'll obviously take questions now. I'm not sure how much time we have. I'm trying to cram a lot in. But I'm happy to share. I am a very collaborative person. I do not want ever to say, like, this is our stuff and you can't know about it. I think we all do better when we work in groups and we can all put our 2 cents in. So I'll open it up if anybody has any questions for me. It could be, why did I come? That's fine too. That's that. Diane made me. No, I'm just kidding. So that's pretty much what we do. Again, our adjuncts are a huge part of our campus. They have to be. Just in the numbers of them, we wouldn't be nowhere without our adjuncts. If our adjuncts walked, we'd be not running a lot of classes on our campus. So we make sure that we include them. And my kind of mantra is an employee is an employee. Whether you're part-time, whether you're full-time, whether you're temporary, whether you're here for a 6-month position, you're still an employee. I don't really care what you're, I started off part-time and I was running HR as a part-time person, right? So we have a lot of part-time folks in really important positions, and in my opinion, adjuncts are part-time folks too. They're part-time professors, really. So an employee is an employee, and we want to give everyone the same experience if we can. So That's how we roll in Nashua.
So this presentation will be on YouTube, and I'll send the link as soon as I get it from IT.
As soon as I fix my spelling error, and then I'll resend
You're
it to Peggy.
fine, you're fine. So it's the same YouTube link that I send periodically. All of the professional development is on that site. And Cathy is very accessible and really awesome, so she means what she says when, if you need to reach out to her, please do.
You can come down to my campus too. I love when people visit, so.
Yep.
You wanna come down, we're good, take a road trip?
So you have the evaluation form, there's a sign-in sheet, so we can put your name in the raffle, and I just want to thank Cathy for making the trip all the way over from Nashua. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.